What's going on, everybody? Coach MccDann here. There's a lot of benefit to mixing up your playstyle to be passive for one moment and aggressive the next in Smash Bros. Today, we'll be going over the hit and run archetype, where we'll be covering a set of characters that make the most out of this sort of playstyle. When evaluating the characters that are within this archetype, there's a good reason to be skeptical towards some of the characters you see and question how they're categorized in this section rather than another. And that's perfectly reasonable to question. There's a good chance that if you've played against some of these characters in the list, like Sonic or Bayonetta, you could be thinking that they identify as a rushdown or a brawler, but there's a bit more under the surface as to why these characters are preferred to be under this archetype over the other ones. We'll get into that, as well as the other pros and cons that come with it, but before we do that, check them out for yourself. Check out the selection of characters you see on screen right now, and play 3 games with one of them or more. After that, we'll dive into more factors of this archetype. Hit and run characters do an exceptional job exceeding in specific areas of their play. This varies between each character, however, and it's because of the various different options that each character has, with some characters like King Dedede having his Gordo special to utilize projectile usage in his playstyle, and Inkling having Paint Roller as a potential setup to take a stock with a smash attack. No matter what the case may be, there's lots of agility and different options between all of these characters. Hit and run characters thrive in a similar way grappler characters would, where the types of interactions they get, they have to really make count in order to get the most damage on their opponent. This doesn't necessarily mean they have to rely on grabs specifically like grappler characters do, but in the same light, hit and run characters prioritize waiting for the most opportune moments to strike with unique combos to accumulate the most damage on their opponents. Depending on what type of hit and run character you find most fitting, there's always a good chance that the character you pick has a decent range of abilities to set up for a moment of action and a moment to fall back, and reset situations. This is one of the most important factors to not only hit and run characters, but an overall understanding of how to play Smash Bros. Ultimate itself. Many people like to compare Super Smash Bros. To essentially the most complex game of rock, paper, scissors of all time. In a situation where an opponent makes an attempt to do an action, you will always have an opposing reaction to deal with that situation. Attack, grab, or shield. Hit and run characters can use the specific perspective to their advantage by waiting to see what option that opponent makes and basing their next moves from there. Sounds great, right? So, now that we've explored the main playstyle of a hit and run character, let's explore some more challenging aspects about them as well. We've discussed about all the potential hit and run characters have when it comes to being the aggressor in a battle, but what traits exactly put more pressure on these characters specifically? With the understanding that we have on how hit and run characters get the most benefit when they're able to make the most out of their interactions, what makes these characters a bit more difficult to play involves actually getting those interactions. You see, hit and run characters typically play back and wait for their opponent to strike for a majority of the time. So if that opponent eventually gets the lead in stocks and percentage, or avoids some of the hit and run character's most helpful abilities, it will require much more effort from the hit and run character to actually get the chance they need to catch up. Pair this up with characters that already don't necessarily have the best options, it doesn't help them approach in a situation that would earn them as much percentage as if an opponent was at a disadvantage. So it's important to keep that in mind when learning more about this archetype. Alright, we just went over the hit and run archetype. This will help you determine going forward what a match will seem like involving these characters in the future once you come across them in battle. Playing 3 to 5 games against a CPU level you're comfortable with, as well as selecting a character from this category you've played the least of, will not only build your knowledge on that character matchup, but allow you to get a general understanding of how all characters in this archetype perform.